Carolyn, hey, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
hmm Oh, yeah. I am excited to talk with you. We're talking about design and how that is important for our businesses. This is a topic that I think we've talked about a little bit in the past, but it just continues to be important. We've done a little update of our office space here over the last few months, and I know there's more to be done, but this is always something that needs to be top of mind for us as we grow our practices. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the question that I always start with, which is, why do you do this? Why is this important in your life? Why'd you choose it out of all the other things you could presumably be doing?
I could presumably be doing. Well, I, I'm an interior designer, interior architect, and I think it chose me more than me chose it, and that
Hmm.
I chose to do that when I was 14. My father worked for NASA, and he was worked on the advanced preliminary design of the space
Hmm.
station.
Hmm.
And an architect was working with them on the interior design of a zero gravity Earth orbiting space station. And
Wow.
he would come over and visit. He was younger, and he would come over and visit with my father because he's from Florida, and they moved him to Houston for this project. And they would sit and philosophize for hours about the theory of space and the psychology of space and how people react in space, and how space has an environment. It has a thing that happens to you depending on what's going on around you. So they would
Hmm.
just philosophize about it, and it just was like, hey, I was interested in art, and I was interested in people, and I thought, hey, this was a good mix of the two, helping create environments that will help people be what they want to be in the environment. So
Hmm.
that's how I got started in that. And then I went on to graduate, went to the University of Texas, ended up in Atlanta, was doing design and all over design and design build, et cetera, working for myself for years, and then started working at Life University in 2003.
Hmm.
That's a chiropractic college here. And most of my project work was just corporate offices and design and stuff. But I got very immersed in under just the students and their aspirations to grow and become and be people in the world that with their visions. And so I began to learn a lot about the profession of chiropractic. And I was already a holistic patient. I'd already been under chiropractic care and then under functional medicine care, et cetera, more alternative care myself.
Hmm.
So as we got into working in the university, they asked us to actually create, and when I say we, my husband does construction. So we were doing design
Wow.
build all over campus. And in 2010-ish, they asked us to teach a class to the students on why your office environment matters. And I just got so excited. We just did it purely gratis. And I had already done one chiropractic office, an independent chiropractor that I bartered with. He was a student at my chiropractor, and he said, "Why don't hey go barter?" So I did, and it was because he opened around the corner. So I fell in love with helping the more sole practitioner, or the smaller non-corporate, as I'd always worked in corporate. So a whole bunch of little pieces all came together, and it was like, hey, let's help these doctors have more success in an area that they don't know anything about, and that's it's is their branding. Their office is their branding, and their office is an extension of who they are. And as we talked earlier, in the corporate world, interior design, interior architecture is just an expectation. It's just a piece of getting your office laid out correctly, getting it efficient and maximize the flow, and then how you design it to meet your needs of your company, needs of whether it's retail or hospitality or an office. And the smaller practitioners just don't understand that. So we went on a mission to explain that and to teach that. And then out of that grew us designing offices all over the country, all over the world, actually, because we do it virtually. And then it went from chiropractic, and it just kept expanding. So we do all types of, I would call them more alternative medical
Hmm.
practices,
Hmm.
not straight medical as much as more alternative, but all types of. So that's how we got into it. 2010, 11, somewhere in there. So yeah.
That's amazing. What a story. I mean, it sounds like a combination of early childhood stuff and then some personal experiences and,
Just
going where the
like a
opportunities present
tapestry that all got
themselves.
woven together. Yes, very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm super grateful. I end up talking to a lot of sort of auxiliary professionals that are focused on healthcare
Mhm.
professions, from money management to design to websites to whatever, and I'm just so grateful that there are those of y'all out there who have chosen to focus on working with folks like us, because
Yeah.
this is not we do not get taught this stuff in grad school, and I know there are a lot of offices out there that are not probably up to par. We need a lot of help, I think, when it comes to non-clinical stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's not what you study. Like you say, you don't study business when you're in school. You study what it takes to get your license. So, you need to learn those other things. If you're going to be in business for yourself, you've got to learn them outside. So
Right.
that's what it's all about. So
Sure.
that's why your listeners are here, right?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of being a business owner, is just building these sort of miniature skill sets where we have to know a little bit about design, or at least know how to hire the right person. We need to know a little bit about marketing or hire the right person. Yeah, it's owning a business is wild. We could go down that path, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Well,
not do
thanks for Let's not
that.
do that. Yeah, we can do that another time, I think. But
Okay.
people are excited to hear about the design component. And a part of your story actually stuck out to me. This should be a no-brainer, but I really didn't even think about how bigger entities or corporations just have design as a matter of course in their business. It's just a line item that has to be accounted for, because it does make such a big difference and at that scale. And it's just interesting. Got me thinking about, this should be integrated more into small business as well.
Yeah, it's just like before people had websites, what I'm
Hmm.
saying? It's like the only people that really had websites a long time ago were the big corporations, and they were basically a brochure of who they
Right.
were. And now it's become kind of an important piece, and they wouldn't think about not having one. So now the small business owners understand that too. So it's just a matter of helping them understand and be educated on
Right.
that. So
Great.
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Well, let's dive into some of the content here. I would love to start just with a maybe definition around what you call, like, what is included when you say design, architecture, how are those related? Let's start there.
Okay. Okay. That we have to start there, right?
Yes.
So, what we start with is the idea of form follows function. So, what that means is that they're totally interrelated. For those that can see me, my hands are all connected together. It's not, hey, you get the space to function well, and then you make it pretty, the form being the aesthetics. It has to think cohesively together.
Hmm.
And so, but you've got to lead with function. So, the very first thing that happens, and a lot of practitioners understand this, is that space needs to function well. And function well means that you need the right amount of space for what you're doing. You don't need it to be too small, or that impedes your efficiency and
Hmm.
operation. If it's too big, you're wasting space on rent, right? So it's just the right amount of space is a really key. A lot of practitioners don't really understand how much space they really need. So we start there. How much space do you need? And then we start talking about how you practice and how you flow. So depending on the different types of practices, you might have patients in and out of your office on a real regular basis. Chiropractors have high volume of patients in and out of their practice, but a practice like yourself will be more smaller and longer visit times. So how is that patient coming into the space? What are they experiencing when they first come into the space, and how do they process through it? So functionally, everything's where it needs to be, saves you time, saves you energy, lowers your operation cost. So
Can I
that
ask
has
you a
to happen
question?
first. Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question about the space and the size specifically. Because people ask about this all the time, like, how much space do I need? I wrestle with this in terms of our waiting area, which we will talk about here in just a bit, in a little bit of
Yeah.
a live consult, which I'm
Yeah.
excited for.
Yeah.
But yeah, with our waiting area, it's like, how much space do we need? based on our practitioners and patient flow. Do you have any guidelines or rules or rubrics or anything like that that are easy for folks to understand if they're considering just size of a space?
So there's like, we call them kind of formulas, guideline formulas.
Hmm.
Um, so let me just kind of walk through a lobby real quick and just
Great.
our lobby waiting space. So what you want to think about is how many people do you want to seat in your waiting area? And then that times a certain square footage will tell you how much space you need for the waiting. But that certain square footage depends on how you want them to be seated in the space. So I already have seen your space. You have sofas in your space. So that is more square footage per person. Okay.
Hmm.
So if you
Hmm.
want a sofa, a living room, you need about 35 square feet per person that's going to be
Hmm.
in that space. If you're going to be in what I'm going to call more of a high density, imagine, just rows of chairs,
Hmm.
that's going to be the lowest square footage. The smaller the chair, the lower the square footage. So you can get down to 15 square feet per person. But there
Hmm.
is a minimum. I mean, you don't want just 15 square feet for one person because that's not really enough. So there's some guidelines on that. So we start with that. How many people do you want to seat in your lobby? And that usually has to do with how your patient flow is going to be, right? Because if you're seeing one person, what do you see? One person an hour or a
Well,
family an hour or so? But you have
that's
multiple
yeah.
people in your lobby serves more than just you. So that's a different thing. So how many
Hmm.
people are you going to serve in an hour is a good rule of thumb for how many people you need. And
Yeah.
just thinking of them flowing through, okay, and where they are going to be. So that's how most people kind of process through it in
Right.
operation. And then it's so
Yeah.
many square feet per person. And
Hmm.
then you've got some kind of front desk. And your front desk, it depends on how many people are going to be behind your front desk. And a good rule of thumb is 50 square feet per person. So if you've got one person, approximately 50 square feet. So like a 6 by 8 area is a pretty typical, work area that fits that 50 square feet. So that's a good rule of thumb. And then if you have multiple, a larger practice may have multiple people behind a front desk, and that just keeps multiplying out. So you
Right.
start there, and then let's just say you have that all figured out. And then you look at, do you have a hospitality area? Do you have a retail area? Do you have a kids waiting area
Mm.
that's specifically for kids? And then you have so many square feet per child, depending on, is it really active play? Like you want to, if you're a pediatric therapist, you're going to have probably a good sized playroom while those kids are waiting. Or you don't want them to wait too long and you have that in your office. So you just have to work through it. So you start with your list of what you're trying to do, and then there are formulas and calculations to do that. And we have some resources on our website called Planning Your Office that we go
Oh,
through some square footages. The
great.
next thing you do though is you add up all those square footages, and you've got to have circulation and exit and things like that. So you add about 40% to get your circulation space. So you see how
Yeah.
that kind of starts to add up there? So
Oh, sure.
I don't know physically how large I know I looked at your lobby, but I don't know. I never asked you how big it was. We didn't really focus on that, but
Right.
um,
Right.
it's that's how you come up with it. How many square feet you come up with. There is some calculation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love this. I love this. I mean, our audience, I think, is pretty data driven and metric driven. And just knowing that there are formulas like this to consider, I could personally speaking, I've never used anything like that in trying to design any space I've rented or put together. So that's great information just to have
Yeah,
off the
and
top of
if
your
you
head.
think about ultimately it's how does the furniture and the equipment lay out into the space?
Yes.
And there's rules around that too. So if
Okay.
that
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to save some of this for our live consult
helps.
portion of the interview here. But this
Okay.
is good. I mean, just good for people to know, and we'll make sure to put the resource in the show notes as well, the link to your website if folks want to go check that out.
Okay.
Try to get a
Awesome.
better idea. Okay, so going back to this form follows function idea. So you're
Yes.
looking at how the space is laid out first, and then
Yes.
doing the design on top of that. Is that right?
Yes. Only as a designer, we're we can't separate the two. So when you say that, so the design integrates into it is what I'm saying, more than on top of. And that's kind of hard to explain to people unless you're in it and doing it. But
Yeah.
as you think about flowing through a space, you're, as a designer, they think about it three-dimensionally. And how is that feeling to the person that's going through it? So it has to both work. You know,
Yes.
the flow has to work, and then the aesthetics and the feeling. Because the aesthetics are not just paint on the wall and, you know, some art, some pictures. It's like the ceiling and the lighting and the change of textures and all kinds of elements that, as you move through a space, create different emotions. Because it's all about creating
Mm.
emotions in the in your
Mhm.
patients, and
Right.
choosing the emotions you want in your patients is the big thing. So
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the example that many of us have probably heard about, whether it's an urban legend or not, is, the casinos in Vegas and how the layout and design are meant to elicit certain behaviors and feelings and things like
Oh
that. I mean,
yeah.
is there legitimacy to that whole
Oh
that
yeah.
whole
Oh
story?
yeah. Oh yeah. Very much so. There's a psychology of space.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a psychology of space that a lot of people can relate to. And so think about when you first enter a space, we think about retail design, because retail design is your first impression, and people buy first with their eyes. So you know that if you're doing any marketing, that if people are going to find you and they find you on the website, they need to like what they see right away, and they need to find what they want. Unless they're coming from a referral, and then they'll dig through everything to figure it out. But if they don't know you from Adam, it's how you show up initially.
Yes.
So if you're working and you're spending money to show up beautifully on a website, when they walk in the door, there needs to be a congruency to that to happen. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yes.
same thing, even if it's a referral, if somebody refers you to a patient, if you have someone refer you, they're going to refer you if they feel proud about it. We've seen people that do facelifts that get an amazing increase in referrals from patients that have been with them forever, because all of a sudden the patients are proud of the space. So I kind of digress. So if we think about spaces, the first thing you want to do is you want to know who is your ideal patient. And then secondly, how do you want to show up to them? How do you want to be their solution? And it's emotional words. It's like I want to be a safe place for them. I want to be I'm thinking of words I've heard therapists, but a safe place. I want to um, get them to be calm, and what I'm saying, you're not trying to be a gym and create all kinds of energy. You want them to be calm. You want them to be focused. So creating that environment for that to happen um, can support what you're trying to do. So it can support your whole practice.
Yes.
But think about two retail spaces I'm going to bring to mind. And this is no criticism for Walmart, because Walmart makes a lot of money. But Walmart is very, very intentionally designed to be the low priced leader.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Everything about it. When you walk into Walmart, you feel like you're going to get a deal. The
Hmm.
lights are bright, the surfaces are hard, there's stuff everywhere. There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of stimulation, lots of words, lots of advertisements, lots of things going on. And it doesn't really matter if the shelves are really neat. You're still going to dig for a deal. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a whole psychology that supports that. I'm in one level up from a garage sale of sorts. I mean, it's not that much, but if Walmart tried to upscale, people would not feel like they're getting the deal. Do you know what I'm saying? If they did anything in their spaces. So they support that in everything that they do. It's bare bones of sorts. Now you go all the
Mm-hmm.
way to a high-end designer store, okay? Maybe a purse store.
Hmm.
You walk in, the light level's different. You don't see signs. It's hard to find the price. It's one item at a time. Do you know what I'm saying? It's more like an art gallery. And so it
Mm-hmm.
creates a different expectation of what that client or that patron or whoever it is that's going into that store to buy. And if they walked into Walmart and it looked like that, they would not feel like they're getting a deal. But if they walked into the high designer store and it looked like Walmart, they'd probably walk out because they're there for a different reason. So you follow what I'm saying. So I'm not saying you need to be Walmart. I'm not saying you need to be a high-end designer store, but most practitioners need to be somewhere in the middle, and they need to know who their ideal patient is.
Right.
And that's the key. And then the design is driven from that.
I gotcha. So taking that example and applying it to our field, are there equivalents that you found in your work with healthcare folks for maybe not the Walmart? I mean, nobody wants to say like, "Hey, we're a commodity-based healthcare business where we're just, trying to give people the best deal." But I'm guessing there is some kind of equivalent agency, right? Like, do you work with healthcare folks who are more, uh, yeah, who are, I can't think of a better word, but more like Walmart versus a high-end art gallery?
Well, I don't work with them, but I've had conversations with therapists
Okay.
about them that they don't want to show up like the state board health examiners offices and things of that
Uh,
sort, if you follow what I'm
Yeah.
saying, where
Yes.
it's very institutionalized and you feel very you know, you know what I'm talking about. Inside of a more of a controlled environment, those spaces feel that way. I'm not sure how people open up except they really don't have any other choice at that point to open up. If you
Mhm.
follow what I'm saying, I am stereotyping. I haven't been to and know every state healthcare agency there is out there, but you know what I'm saying. That has
Mhm.
come up with therapists. They'll say, I think of one in particular. So I feel like I look like a state healthcare agency. And
Okay.
and the thing is he did work with people that were coming out of the system and things of that sort. So he couldn't be too flu because he needed to support them. But he also worked with some executives that he needed to find a balance between the two and not make it feel um, had to be comfortable for both, which is a little bit hard to do. You kind of, well, you find where your ideal client is and you try to go there, and
Mhm.
that allows a little bit on both sides to be okay with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Sure. That
Okay.
seems like a wide range
It
to
is.
accommodate.
Yeah, it was.
That sounds hard. Yeah.
It was.
I think this is important though, just to spend some time on this because, I consult with folks building their practices who will put a lot of energy into their website. And I think especially these days, it's easy to build a website that looks pretty good with all the tools out there. But then you get to the pictures of the office and it does not match. And it sounds like you're saying that consumers will pick up on that and it creates a little dissonance that
Yeah.
doesn't work in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, what it's hard to find pictures of offices on websites a lot of
Mm,
time. I know that more people are doing videos of people in their office where it's focused
mm,
on the people and not, which is great. You're seeing people, you're seeing stuff, and that's probably more important than a architectural. Like on our portfolio, it's all architectural pictures, like you would see in a
yeah,
magazine. There's not people in them.
right.
It's what we do. But saying that, we have when we do an office and we have professional pictures made, our doctors do put those pictures on their website, and it does
Mm,
help people go, wow, that's
hmm.
something interesting or impressive.
Yeah.
Where was I going full circle? It's more about when the people walk into the office
Hmm.
after they've
Hmm.
seen this website, they've seen this
Mm,
wonderful, well-designed, modern, clean website, and they walk into something that's just totally disconnected. It 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 doesn't mean that you're not going to, especially a new patient. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have that patient stay or sell or anything like that, but it's so much harder to sell them because you're going to go upstream instead of them walking in and going, wow, this is comfortable. This makes me feel like I'm feeling atmosphere.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe we talk about some specific ideas and then we can get into my own office consultation here,
Yeah,
which
that'll
I'm
be fun. Yeah.
scared of, to be honest. But so generally speaking, I mean, function wise, so just layout, layout. function. Are there some general principles that you could say, hey, this is best, if folks are thinking about how to lay out their office space? Or is it truly like space
Mm.
dependent?
Um, well, it's practice dependent
Okay.
more than space dependent.
Mm. Hmm.
There are some certain rules though. If you've got a lot of people moving through the space, one of the rules that we have is that all of your hallways are 5 feet wide. And one of the reasons that is because if your hallways are less than first, if they're 5 feet wide, you've met all handicap accessibility codes,
Hmm.
period. You don't have to worry about it. You can
Yes.
go down to about 4'6" and still do that. But if they get any less than 5 feet, we found that two people passing in the hallway, one has to stop. And just think about over time, you know, it could add up to 10 or 15 minutes. And say you're a practitioner, you see patients, you see them in 10 to 15-minute increments. That's one or two patients a day that you can add to your practice just in volume. So that's kind of a mentality, the higher the volume. A lower volume practice also has to do with, are you escorting the patient through, or is the patient escorting themselves? I don't know how you practice, but do you come out and get your people and have them come back? Okay.
We do.
So that's a different thing. Do you know what I'm saying? That's more of the space is important, but the efficiency is more, I'd say it's more important like in your specific office, or all your things that you need easy for you to get to, and that kind of efficiency, not as much the size of the room as the way that the product or the furniture inside is laid out. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's very specific to the practice.
Yes. Yes. I like, yeah, just an observation. You keep coming back to the practice and, using just words like ideal customer and, practice dependent. It's very much like we really have to put some thought into what environment we're trying to create. And it feels like branding almost more than
It is
anything.
branding. It is.
Hmm.
Oh, it's exactly branding. It is
Hmm.
branding,
Mm.
100%. It's just it's an extension of your branding. So it very much. In
Yeah.
fact, the yeah, the same kind of, if you've gone through any kind of branding exercise with any kind of graphics person that really goes into the fullness of your brand, not just, hey, I'm going to give you a logo, but the fullness of how you're going to show up. They're asking the same questions that we ask, do you know?
Mm.
And
That's fascinating. Yeah.
ideally, when they come to us, they've actually gone through both parts. A lot of people that come to us are moving offices or opening offices, and it's an opportunity to do some rebranding real
Okay.
easy, or some
Well,
finishes.
so that's a side question then. Like, is it helpful if people come with a solid brand uh, identity? Like, I mean, in an ideal world, would you like someone to come with their like brand assets all ready to go?
If they come to us with their brand assets already done, then we can complement it and keep going.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what that does is, so we basically charge by the hour,
Hmm.
and we charge based on historical data, how big the square footage is, what kind of project it is, et cetera. But we have a range,
Hmm.
and that range varies it actually varies more because of the client than it does for anything. So a client that's already gone through the branding process we find is already very decisive, and they're
That's
very
fair.
clear. They already
Yeah.
have a vision. But we're also very gifted at pulling out that vision. So we have clients that come to us, and we spend the time pulling out the vision. And for example, people will pull together, we ask them to put together a vision board for us that has to do with the
Hmm.
space, not their
Hmm.
brand, but their
Hmm.
space. And you'll see them that they are all consistent. And you go, okay, they know their brand, they know what they're going after, all the pictures are consistent. And then you'll see them where they're all over the place. Do you know what I'm saying? The spaces go from super modern to country farmhouse to different styles, different things. And so those are the ones that's part of our gifting, is to work through and help figure out what is it that you like about these spaces and how does that match with who you want to show up as. Because the other thing about it, we talked about this earlier, is that commercial design is not a luxury. Residential design is more of a luxury.
Hmm.
Residential design is very much about the human being and the person and trying to create a space for them, which is wonderful and lovely. But it's their favorite stuff. Your office should be your ideal client's favorite stuff. Do you follow me? Not yours. And not that it's always different. I mean, it's not, because it's who you are and who you show up. But I think of an example of someone who, really, really loved the color red. He just loved red, but he was trying to create this really soothing environment and it didn't work together. So it's like, how do you do that? Let your car be red and let's go, let's go do something different in your environment. So
Yes. Yes. I
if
think
that
that's
makes
I'm glad you brought that up. I just personally speaking, I feel like that is a problem that I've really wrestled with because of course, I'm the owner of our practice. I kind of set the tone for our design and so forth. And like, I know my personal preferences really well, and it's been hard to be flexible with that, I suppose. And, I just want the office to look exactly like I want it to look. And maybe that's what the client wants, maybe not. Anyway, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, and I'm guessing some
well,
other practice owners run into that too.
if your clients are very similar to you, then you're probably
Mhm.
right on.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We can talk
Yeah.
about that as we go
Yeah.
along, I think. Yes.
So, yeah, where
But
you,
that's important to point that out,
yeah.
I'm guessing, for other
And
owners. Yeah.
it is. And just being careful what you like. And
Sure.
I mean, there's some
Sure.
people that like some really, so I'll give you a good example. You're in a therapist. You don't want an office that looks like it's space age. You just don't
Mm,
want to, because that's
hmm.
not familiar. You need to create familiarity in a therapy office. Do you know what I'm saying? If you
Yeah.
were, if you're creating cutting edge, state of the art regenerative medicine type stuff, yeah, look like your space age because people will walk in. So do you follow what I'm saying? It's like,
Yes.
what are you offering in your practice?
Yes.
And what does it
That's
look
fair.
like?
That's fair. I have so many questions. I'm honestly, I'm just verbalizing. It's so
That's
hard to
great.
choose
No.
what to talk about because I have so many questions with this. Maybe I'll pick one though, and this may be an obvious question, but I would love to hear you reflect on any geographical differences that you may have found. Like, do you see different trends based on like city versus rural or Midwest versus coastal? I'm just curious about like bigger, patterns in design and layout.
All of those things you said, we almost call them as styles. So
Okay.
yes, there's a big city style that's more trendy. It's
Hmm.
more, it's keeping up with the Joneses feeling. It's very much more like what's the next and newest thing that's out there to be, and it can be trendy.
Hmm.
Trendy meaning that there's design items that, well, they date. Okay, things can come and go. So the trendier something is, the faster it dates.
Hmm.
The less trendy it is, the longer it dates. But that can be okay in the city because they're competing with all the retail that are trendy and all the other people that are trendy. So how do you want to show? And that's another thing. How do you want to show up compared to your competition? What do
Right.
you want to, how do you want to be known for? So yes, there's a general, now it's not absolute, but there's a generality of a big city and a generality of a country. As soon as I say that to you, you see different pictures in your head, right?
Yes.
And there definitely is a difference in what we would call Florida versus Seattle. I mean, Seattle has a coast too, but there's a difference in it and how it
Hmm.
feels and how the and how, just and we think about how people dress and what they wear. It's working with a doctor that we're building offices around the country. And, the ones up north, we have to have a vestibule. We have to have a place for people to take off their galoshes and they have to, you know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? It's a different, but people live that way. And that's what has to be taken care of. And it's just very different than having one that you can open up the whole front and have people be part of the experience all the time, or a big part of the time.
Sure.
Does
Sure.
that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you indulging some of these questions. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
talked about, are there just like basic principles to guide the layout? And you said it was practice dependent, which is great. Are there basic principles to guide the design, the form for a space? Or again, is it practice dependent?
Well, in the design, okay, so in design, you start with what is your end goal? What are you trying to do? Which you gather from all of the intake that you have with your client. And then depending on that, in design, we have what we call principles of design, and then we have elements of design. So
Okay.
principles are like what we follow to have good design. And we're going to talk about some of those in your lobby. Okay.
Great.
So they have to do with things being proportion, things being balanced, things being, they're everything there is. If it's out of balance, your mind, it's not good. To be good design, you need to basically meet these principles. And so that's over here. But then the elements are the ones that create different emotions. So I'll give you an example. We were talking about horizontal lines make people want to be comfortable and sit down. Okay. Vertical lines make people want to stand up. Curved, like a perfect curve, creates community,
Mm.
like a circle, kind of
Hmm.
a more
Hmm.
geometric. And then like a whimsical curve or a whimsical shape creates more melancholy, fun, kind of laughter. So just the use of lines in the way that things are styled can change an emotion. The same thing with the shape. A big psychology is textures, and
Hmm.
another huge psychology is color. There's a huge psychology of color. And
Sure.
yeah, and then the other thing is light. So light
Hmm.
levels can change energy
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately. And, natural light, we know that natural light actually creates an energetic healing feeling. And then low dark light creates, it's your body. It's how your body reacts to light. So you can use it or not. So we love to do it. We talk about quality design is not expensive. I mean, it can be really expensive, but it doesn't have to be expensive at all. It just has to be well thought through, and just looking at all the different principles and then the use of the different elements paint is the cheapest thing you can do, and it can create the most impact. We use
Yeah.
paint, variations in paint to create drama or to create energy or to create quietness or whatever, just throughout an office.
That's
So,
fantastic. Yeah. I'm gonna double click on a couple of those things. So color real quick. Are there, I mean, I think we all have heard don't do anything with red. You said that, don't do anything with red.
well, so when I say don't do anything with red is very, very intense.
Okay.
Okay. And red creates energy. It actually can raise your, what do you call it? Your heart rate.
Hmm.
And they can see that. So you have to be intentional about it. So if you are creating an environment that you want, now you're probably not doing this as a therapist, but if you're creating an environment that you do want a lot of energy, or if you want a lot of power, the red tie creates like, just enough,
Sure.
just enough tie, just enough red.
Hmm.
So what is
Hmm.
the image you're trying to get across?
Hmm.
Um, blue. So I do a whole class on color theory, but it's like blue is a very calming color. So you take the color wheel. I don't know how far we want to go with this, but everybody knows the color wheel. We did
Hmm.
this, and you start with the three colors, the three main colors that you can't mix. You've got red, you've got yellow, and you've got blue. You can't mix anything to get that. And each one of those are the main hue. And then you start to mix them together and you get secondary colors and tertiary colors, etc. So color is infinite. But the general base color we call the hue. So the base color of yellow is a memory. That's why you use yellow highlighters and yellow legal pads. It invokes memory. So
Hmm.
we're going to talk about that in your office, right?
Oh yeah.
Where it has warmth to it. So you take the color wheel and you have warm side and you have the cool side.
Hmm.
So the yellow is on the warm side, the orange is on the warm side, the red is on the warm side.
Hmm.
And then you go to the other side, the blue and the green are on the, now you have purple, and it depends on how much red or blue is in the purple on how warm or cold it is. So but it actually calms you down on the cool sides versus warms you up and gets you energetic on the warm side. So that's as basic as it gets. Then you go
That's
into the
great.
intensity of color,
Hmm.
how bright it is versus how dulled out it is,
Hmm.
which is what happens when you mix the opposite colors on a color wheel. So you end up with, brown Easter egg color, that everything ends up brown when you mix all the things
Right.
together.
Right.
Easter egg water. And then you have what's called value. So that's adding white to a color or adding black to a color. So you can take a color, let's call it orange, and you can add white to it and it becomes peach. It
Hmm.
becomes feminine and light and airy. You can add black to it and it becomes rust and it becomes more masculine. You follow what I'm saying? So it's
Oh yeah.
like, so yeah, that's psychology. That's psychology in a moment's notice.
I love it. Love it. Well, the other component I wanted to ask about too is the lighting. So I think a lot of us probably struggle with lighting because we're in spaces that have overhead fluorescent lighting. So can we say a little bit about that? And that's going to pop up as we look at our waiting area because that's our situation. So, but is there anything to say just on a basic level about fluorescent, how to deal with fluorescent lighting in an office space?
So fluorescent lighting, first off, the newer offices don't even have fluorescent, they have LED. But it's still the idea of a wash of light. So you get
Hmm.
into a typical office building, it has 2x4, 2x2 ceiling, and then it has 2x4 fixtures in there. And that is the cheapest lights you can get to get an overall wash of light. So that's just what it is, what you're trying to do. So you understand that you need a certain amount of brightness in your area to clean it well, but you really don't want this overall wash of light in a typical therapist office. And I know you have other doctors you work with too, but you typically don't want that wash of light. You want a variation of light. So the way you get a variation of light is if you're fortunate to do can lighting, it can create a variation of light.
Hmm.
Another way to do lighting overhead is to do track lighting. And track lighting creates like the opportunity to have a variation of light, if you're following me.
Hmm.
And if you can't change architecturally your lighting, what what you do is you turn off your lights and you put lamps. And I think you did that in your office. I think I saw that when we looked at your pictures quickly, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But
Hmm.
the lamps create that home comfortable variation of light color. And you can do lighting, up lighting. You can get enough light in the room. You just don't want a wash of light unless you want to feel like you're in Walmart or an
That's
office.
fair.
Yeah.
That's
So
fair. Okay.
that help.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is fantastic. It's like I said, I could ask a million questions about this stuff. I'm just fascinated by this material, but I think we've probably teased folks long enough. I would love to dive into this little experiment that we're gonna call a live consult. So, just for some background for the listeners, I sent Carolyn some pictures of our waiting area to check out ahead of time. And so I'm going to pull those up on a screen share here. So if you're not watching the video, absolutely go check out the video. We will do our best to describe what we're seeing, but I think the video is going to bring it to life more than anything.
And you also sent your office, and it was
Oh,
and let's start with your office because a lot of people have offices, and there's not as much I would say to do there as there is in your lobby. So why don't we
okay.
just start there? So we start on a what works beautifully here, and
Okay.
go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. So let me get everything set up here and we will start this screen share. All right. So hopefully this is showing up. Can you see this okay,
I
Carolyn?
can. I can.
All right. So yeah, what we have here is my personal office, and I will let you take it from here and just hold my breath and see what happens.
So what I'm going to comment on is overall, it immediately feels warm and cozy. And for those of you that can't see it, it's basically a neutral colored walls. It's kind of call it kind of a taupey off whitish color. And then the sofa is gray, a little bit cooler next to the warm wall, which works beautifully, blends nicely. And then the rug is a little bit grayer, a little bit darker, and the carpet is kind of in between the two. So it all blends together. The rug has some wonderful texture. It's kind of a fluffy rug, which feels more homey. You not too commercialized. It's got two, I'm going to call them, they don't slide back or anything, but they're two
Okay.
comfortable kind of, but contemporary chairs that look comfortable, but they're small and it feels like you could want to come in and want to sit in any one of those places. I'm sure that you have people sit in all of them. So just when in the therapist's office, where the people come in and sit is obviously extremely important because you need them to be comfortable, and you've got a nice, comfortable, solid surface. You've got all of your textures. I mean, all of your colors tend to be more monochromatic, and the bookcase and everything. And then you have this wonderful little pop of yellow. Yeah, and we talked about yellow having kind of a softness and a memory and a just an energy to it, but it's just enough. And then the picture above your sofa also has some fun color in it, and it's got the blues, a tiny bit of yellow, it's got the blues, a little bit of red. And what I commented on is I noticed immediately that the height of your picture was what I would consider perfect for what you have in the room because it's lower. I think it's probably at or lower than most people's eye level. And what you want to do is when your pictures in your room, anything in your space, if you've got a lot of interest up high, people want to stand up.
Hmm.
If you lower the interest, you lower the eye level, people want to sit down. So usually a picture is hung around 60 inches above the floor. If you
Mm.
go above that, it's great for a lobby, but you don't want to go too high, right? And then if you go below that, like even down to 54 inches or so, people want to sit down. So I know a lot of it has to do with how tall people are in their eye level, but the average person, let's call them 6 foot, 5'6". And so the 5 foot level kind of fits there. So you've done that well. And then the other thing you've done is instead of hanging pictures all over the wall, you've actually tilted them so it creates kind of an artistic look to them where they're sitting on the bookcase and they're leaning up against the wall, and you varied them nicely. The only thing I would say is I'd probably the picture those things against so pictures, when you have a series of pictures on the wall, you want them to either have they're all the same size and they have a rhythm, or you want to get them closer together and create what we call a composite. Okay, so the
Mm.
only thing I'd probably tell you to do is take the pictures that are against your window and
Hmm.
probably get them closer together so they feel a little bit more like they're one piece instead of three pieces. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because it's too, if you have too many places of interest, it gets too busy for people to pay attention to. So what I see immediately is the picture above the wall and that little splash of yellow, and it's drawing you to sit. I bet people come and sit at your sofa first. Do
Oh,
they?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
even more because it's just a drawing thing. Then the other thing you have in the corner, you have your desk. I don't know if you change it when people come in, but you want to avoid people seeing clutter if you can
Hmm.
do anything. So I don't see a lot of clutter, but maybe if you may have just taken it for me and not thought about it how it is when people come in. Then the only other thing is make sure all your blinds are even. See how uneven your blinds are?
Oh, I
That would
saw
drive.
that as we started talking. I'm like, oh no, these blinds.
But
Yes.
one of the things you did is you've turned off your fluorescent lights, and you don't have those on at all, do you? And
No, no.
do you just have the one lamp, or do you have one on the other side of the sofa too? It looks
Yeah,
like,
there's another one on the other side of the sofa.
yeah. So, that's probably enough light for you, especially when you have the windows open. Maybe it might get dark, so you might want to add a couple of up lights in the corners on the other side of the room if you want to, if you ever needed it. But I'm just going to tell you, I wouldn't do a lot of anything different in this office.
Wow.
So, so I want to tell
Well,
you
that means a lot. I'm going to go
that.
home and tell my wife that
Yeah.
my office is great, and it's
Your
because I
office is great. Okay, I'm
decorated it
gonna
this
have
way.
one more thing. So see all the little stuff on your, so think about when you have lots of little things, how do you
Mm,
create a composite? How do they kind of,
mm,
instead of just one here, one there, can you just even pulling them closer together
hmm.
or getting a tray and putting them on makes them feel more unified than just lots of little things. Just a
Sure.
just a decorator thing. I don't even know. I can't even exactly tell what's on the underneath that. It may be things you use in therapy. Are they?
Oh, yeah. Looking underneath the table.
Yeah. I'm looking at
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, for those of you who are just listening, I have kind of a glass top table and then it has a little shelf underneath, right, right above the floor. So, yeah, I have a bunch of toys and fidgets just sitting on the little shelf part. But yeah, you're totally right. It could easily like aggregate all that and just put it in a tray or a bowl or something like that too. Yeah.
from a decorator standpoint, I would, but then as a practitioner, they may feel inclined to touch it more if they're not all together. So
Sure.
you might want to experiment with that because see which one's more important. It's not totally like, oh, this is horrible, but
Hmm.
it's just one of those. If I was walking in your office doing staging, I'd pull all that together,
Nice.
bring it together. So
Nice.
yeah. So there we
Let me
go.
ask you one question. I mean, this is great. I really appreciate it. And my question is, when you say picture height, you said 60 inches. This is a very detailed question, but does that mean like the top of the picture should be
No, I'm
60?
sorry, 60 inches to the middle of the picture.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah, so
Thank you
from
for
the
clarifying.
floor to the middle of the picture typically is 60 inches. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That in itself is such a valuable piece of information. Yeah.
or if you have a composite of pictures,
Hmm.
the middle of that composite at 60 inches is the most
Okay.
typical.
Great. Great.
I
Okay.
would love to, you'll have to measure it and tell me where it really is. I'm looking at it, I'm looking at a photo, and it is it's, has its normal distortions of a photo would have a wide angle lens type liquid. So I'm not
Of
exactly
course.
sure, but it does not feel too high.
Nice. Nice. I'm just looking at the photo myself to see if there's anything else I wanted to ask about. But this is good. If it's not catching your attention as something to fix, I will let it ride. Yeah.
No, I think overall it's good.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So in that case, then let's go to our waiting area. So this is the first photo of our waiting area, and this is taken from the perspective, it's not exactly when you walk through the door, but it's just to the side of our entryway. So this is pretty close to what people see when they walk into our waiting area. And you can maybe describe it based on what you're seeing to help
Yeah,
bring it to life for folks.
so it's a wide, well, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. It's about 16 feet wide. And so is it kind of square? It looks very rectangular in this picture. Or is it?
Right. It's more, yeah, it's deeper than it is wide. So it's definitely further
Okay.
back. Yeah,
It's
it's a
more,
bit of a rectangle. It's not
it's
as much, I mean, this is a wide angle, so it's a little bit distorted, but it's definitely more it's further back than it is wide.
So overall, it's a neutral color. It has the same kind of grade color as the floor, a warmer color. The sofas are definitely a cool gray. And there's that touch of yellow in a pillow, in a throw, and then it looks like a little table and a piece of art. Um, and then there is what I'm going to call the front desk. And it looks like a kind of a modular piece that's open and slabs and things like that are happening. And then in the far back, straight across, looks like a sink hospitality bar type of effect. And I'm assuming there's a hallway on the left that goes down. Is that
Yes.
where you'd go down to your offices and stuff?
Yes.
So I would tell you that it it when you walk in, there's no wow. Okay. I'm not criticized. I don't want to, well, I'm going to be critical now. Okay. So I walk in, there's really no wow. Okay. You walk
Hmm.
in, you're just kind of in the middle of a room. You
Mm-hmm.
know that there's sofas. There's two sofas lined up on the right-hand side. Then there's a sofa on the left-hand side, which happens to be kind of at an angle, which is kind of interesting. And then there's this drawing of a looks like a painting of a tree on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I see is a really messy desk. That's the
Oh,
first thing I see when I walk in. And
you're
it's
right.
messy because of all the cords.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yes.
So it's not, and it's not, it's like a low desk. It's not like there's not anything inviting for me to come up to this. In fact, I see the back of a computer first, as opposed to somebody's face. So just changing that front desk, I think is a possibility just to create some more interest. I don't necessarily know you you don't want to see all that clutter when you first walk in. So whatever you can do to change that desk would probably be a benefit. The
Yes.
other thing is I would love to see potentially even a screen or something in front of that break room thing, because you're walking in and you all of a sudden you see like walking into a kitchen, a break room feeling. So I love
Mm.
the art above. The art's attractive, but if you could take the front desk and make it so that you didn't see the cords in the wall and you had kind of maybe a little bit of angle, and then you maybe create some kind of screen behind it or some kind of something so you're not seeing that messiness, then you immediately walk in and see something inviting. You'd see the person's face right away and not messy, if you follow what I'm saying. That
Absolutely.
would be if you just did that, and then it looks like you have a table on the far left over there. Is that functional, or is that for the break room, or is that what's happening over there?
Yeah, so we use that table as a just a little workstation for parents who are dropping their kids off and need to stay for a few hours while the kid is in the appointment.
Okay.
So it's just a little work desk.
Yeah. So it's very functional. It's very,
Yeah.
so I'm not really, I think there's other pictures so I can see more, but this first impression, that's what I see. And then all of your art could be rehung. Okay. So it looks like the art, the two above the front desk are way high, really, really high. And they
Yeah,
really don't seem to have a lot to do with each other. They're pretty all by themselves, but they're almost like they're too close together to be a they're too close together to not match more. And they're
that
too
makes
far
sense.
apart to be a composite. So let's just say you wanted to keep, what is that? It looks like a telescope, kind of a
Yeah, so this
three-dimensional
is
piece.
yeah, so for the folks again who can't see it, this is our logo. It's our
Okay.
logo and it's a woodworking piece. So it's a wood rendition of our logo that's about 3 feet across and 3 feet up and down, 3.5 feet up and down.
So yeah, if there was a way to have that wall and that logo right there, and now a logo typically is higher than the 6 feet but it looks too high. It looks like
Okay.
it's because I'm seeing how close it is to your ceiling, and your ceiling's probably, even if your ceiling was 8 feet,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The top of that piece. So yeah, that piece is it's just a little too high.
Okay.
Also, when your ceilings are low, you can get away with your pictures being lower. When your
That's true.
ceilings are higher, you can get away with your pictures being higher because of that feeling of how close they are to each other.
That makes
It
sense.
it makes it may actually measure at like 66 inches to the middle, but it just feels too high. So I don't know how some things are not rules. They're just kind of they're kind of intuition type things. But that yellow piece of art, says something, do awesome, be awesome. It's really drawing my attention, but it's just drawing it to kind of, they just don't go together. They're both good looking pieces. They just don't really go together. So if you
Yeah.
could put some kind of screen to block that back, and then
Hmm.
that screen and the desk became more solid. So you hid all those wires and hid all of those things. Um, and you didn't see everything. And maybe it turned at an angle. Maybe everything kind of comes to an angle. I don't know. I don't see the floor plan. And
Hmm.
then move that picture somewhere else
Hmm.
so that my eye just sees what I want to see. So
Right.
I'd start there. You want to go to the next picture? Because I can't see
Yeah, of course.
you're recording this, so you can. So there we go. So see those three pictures? Those are
Yes.
perfect to pull them close together because they're all basically the same size. Do you follow me?
Right.
So if you were
Yes.
to take all three of them and you were to, let's see, you have two sofas and you have a lamp and then you have a little waiting area and then you have the side hope. So, and then the yellow piece of art has a similarity to that Make It Happen blue piece of art. So
Yeah.
those could potentially go together. I don't see them side by side, but it looks like they're close to the same size and they both have a similar frame.
Hmm.
That can make them, and that could make a larger picture. So if you took those three pieces and you pulled them together, you lowered them down and you decided to focus them just focus them over one of those, maybe the sofa in the middle.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not sure
So,
if you could rearrange your sofas at all. Have you tried to turn? Yeah, I don't know if you have the room to change your sofas. I don't think they're I don't think they're horrible where they are. And I get
mhm.
where everything, but yeah, if I just look at that wall and you took those three pieces of art, you lowered them and put them, 6 inches or so apart and just right over that sofa, that would make a big difference without moving anything.
I see. So my concern with something like that, I would love to get your opinion. Like when you bring pictures closer together, then I worry about what happens to the rest of the wall. Like, does the rest of the wall look open? You know what I mean? That's, I think, why I spread them out so much. And
You know
that may or
what?
may not.
Lots of
Yeah.
people do that. You don't,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't, you want to give a focus. So it's okay if the rest of the wall is open. You're
Okay.
just giving that focus piece right there. And if you feel like you need anything, you've got a lamp in the corner, so it gives
Hmm.
some height. You could put something on the desk to give it some height on the other side, just to kind of anchor it. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
necessary. I mean, I know I'm
Yeah.
looking at two big water bottles. I don't know if those have to be there. I know that they're there because
No,
it's
they
convenient.
don't. They're not normally there. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they're not normally there. So that would be a
No.
good thing to put in the storage. But yeah, see,
Yes.
even where I'm standing right now, it's like now, if you do put a screen and you walk around the corner, you're going to have to walk around the corner farther to see the front door.
Yes.
That's a potential challenge, and that's a functional thing. Do you follow what I'm saying? So, but what you could put there, if it's not too big, so it's just a little bit more of a,
Yeah.
if
Just
you,
something to break up that, yeah, and sort of hide that little kitchen area when people walk right
yeah,
in.
the main thing is you want to hide the kitchen area and give more of a focused interest on that
Okay.
one area.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
And if
sounds
you have
good.
one more picture somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, I have one more photo. Okay.
Okay. This pretty much shows. So this is what I would do with that yellow picture. Just
Mhm.
see where the blue picture is,
Yeah.
and you've got a lamp behind that thing. If you lowered that and then however far the right edge is away from the wall, move the yellow picture that far away from the wall so that the two pictures and the lamp become a composite in that corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'd
That
be that easy. And then
sounds
you're
good.
pulling that yellow picture away from your logo. And so they're not conflicting with each other any longer. But the two pictures kind of look like a grouping would be another word, a composite or
Yes.
a grouping.
Yes.
So it's not so
Yes.
open.
That's great.
And I can't tell, is there a window there as you enter the hallway? Or what is that?
Yeah, to the left of the door.
No, no, no. I'm sorry. As you start to go down to the offices, what's on the
Oh,
wall?
that's another picture, framed picture or
Okay.
piece of art.
I can't tell exactly what it is from the
S-
picture.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a, gosh, how would I describe it? It's one of those like maps of our city where, the background is this sort of mossy green and then all the streets are in white. So it's just a street map of our
Street map.
city.
Yeah. So it works. It's fine. Especially if you ended up
Yeah.
with an angled wall right there to kind of block some of that. So
Mm.
the other thing
Hmm.
is you do have 2x4 light fixtures in your ceiling. and it would take
Yes.
a lot of lamps to make it bright enough in there. But it's it- it's like if you're going to have 2x4 light fixtures, it'd be nice if they all were going the same direction because you see
Yeah,
how they're all in different directions.
I do see that.
You can also get filter. You can get lenses or things that cover the lenses that make the light level a little bit lower and not such a
Hmm.
wash of light.
Hmm.
Um, do you own the building? Or are you renting?
No, no, we're just leasing.
You're just leasing and stuff. So, um, yeah, I mean, if you
We could
decide
do
you
that though. They're okay if we want to put some filters or covers on the
put some
lights.
filters or covers and add some more floor lamps and just see if you can. I know in even taking, sometimes you can, if they're fluorescent, sometimes you can take out bulbs and just lower the light level.
Yeah,
So you still have light, but it's not that wash, that bright wash of light.
sure,
You
sure.
could keep the light, above your break area
Okay,
because you
okay.
want it brighter. That is a place you need light, is in your break area. So,
Right, right. Okay.
so what do you
This is
think?
great. Yeah, this is great. This
I
is
hope you're
great.
taking notes.
I am, well, luckily we're recording, so
Yes,
I'm
that
going to
is
go
true.
back.
That is
I'm going
true.
to tell my office manager to just go back and listen to the second half of this interview, and
Yeah.
she'll get lots of ideas. No, this
Yeah.
is great. I think the changes are very doable and totally makes sense to me. So let me ask you one more question. So we have this uh, tree decal thing. So it's not painted on there. It's just, this is just a big sticker essentially.
Yeah.
And we put it there. We've been in this office space for 8 years now, maybe. And this waiting room has gone through a lot of different iterations and arrangements. And so
Yeah.
back in the beginning, the tree was, we had sort of like a little sitting area with some toys. So it was like designating the kids area, so to speak. But now it's just in a random place in our waiting area. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about this tree decal. Um, and for people who are listening, it's one of those decals. You can get them online, but it's like a 6 foot tall branching like leafy tree decal that you can put on your wall, and it's got cool, nice little colors. It looks almost cartoony. So I'm curious what you might do. Do
Well,
we just like
it's
take
not
it down?
offensive. Would you do me a favor and go back to the one that I can see the chair in the corner where I told you to move that yellow picture over?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know what? If you move the yellow picture over, it's going to be on top of your tree. So yeah,
Hmm.
you need to take the tree down. You've had
Okay.
it there for a long time. It's not going to be a sad thing to take it down.
I think we can say goodbye to the tree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you took those two pictures and you lowered them and you kept, you've got that at an angle, and I'm sure you put that at an angle. Um, I'm sure you've played with how you can arrange the room several different
Hmm.
times, but I like the angle. It doesn't feel stuffy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It
Sure.
breaks anytime you can do it, especially if you do your desk at an angle. Do that at an angle and you can do your desk at an angle.
Mhm.
Um, it'd be good. There's,
Nice.
you can find um, really cool looking front desks on Etsy
Hmm.
for fairly inexpensive. So
Furniture? Like a piece of furniture on Etsy?
yeah, people make it and they ship it to you. I mean, it's just a place for craftsmen to show their stuff. So
Yeah. Gosh, I would have
because you
never
don't need a
thought.
very big one,
Right.
they don't make real big ones, but they make some that are kind of fun. But I like the white. I like the white and the lightness of the space. And if you could, if you could build a wall, then it would be. But if you could just get a vision,
Hmm.
I mean, so what I would do right now with a client is we're sitting here talking, and then I would go on to the website and Pinterest and start showing them things. So yeah, we can
Okay.
maybe
Okay.
do that afterwards, but to show you different
Nice.
kinds of ideas. So the things that are in a designer's head, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, this is awesome. I appreciate you going through this
yeah, this has been
experiment.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
this has been fun. Just you don't need just a little bit, just a little bit of, and mostly what I'm talking about is not, you don't have to be a degreed licensed interior designer to tell you what I'm telling. That's very, that's kind of where where a designer knows that they start. They love that kind of, we call it accessorizing, you can
Mhm.
call it staging, whatever. They just kind of, it just happens. It's the creative design thought of just moving things around. In fact,
Okay.
most people that I know that are designers, you know, they move the furniture in their room, you know, every 6 months, and they move the
Mhm.
furniture in their house. It's just kind of that thing that happens to us.
Sure, sure. That's what we do. Well, thank you for doing this. I'm going to stop the screen share and go back to our interview here. I would love to ask you a couple more questions as we start to wrap up, and
Okay.
then we'll say goodbye. But so one of the big questions I think when we get into anything related to design or layout is I don't have that much money. What is most important? So if you had to pick, biggest like bang for your buck choices in the design, primarily the, I guess, accessorizing or staging or things like that.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, I'm going to say this. It really depends on, you know, like what we were doing in your office and stuff, where we were just moving things around. We didn't, the only money I spent, as I said, you need a new front desk and a
Right.
back wall. So that's where you would put your money. I wouldn't even, I don't even think I'd buy anything else, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it just, usually it's that first thing you see when people walk in. We
Yeah.
call it, you know, when we take, it's the wow shot, the money shot, the first thing they see.
Hmm.
And I want to say it doesn't have to be expensive. Do you know what I'm saying? It just has to be thought through and intentional. Like you can probably find a desk on Etsy for, I don't know, $1,000. That's, you know, in comparison to these big built-in desks for 10,000, it's not really that much money. Um, if you don't get too big, you know, the bigger you get, the more it costs. And I don't know what a back wall screen would cost. You know, something that
Yeah.
would look more finished, you know,
Hmm.
more, um, I've got some different ideas, even like pieces of acrylic that are attached on cables, you know, the ceiling and the floor and
Oh.
stuff. Some things that you don't want a divider screen. You don't want that.
Hmm.
You need something that's more um fixed, but you don't want it to have legs to make it stand up. So it's going to be a search process, or you build a
Okay.
wall, you know, something
Okay.
of that sort. But you
Right.
want the first thing people see when they walk in to be the, it's just like the first part of a website, you know, your
Hmm.
hero image and your first words and all of that.
Yeah.
It's got to draw them in and feel attention. So that's where you want to put the most attention.
Yeah.
Money just depends on how bad everything is, you know, or how
Yeah.
good everything is, you know. I mean, if your furniture is really, really shabby, and we have a free checklist for your listeners called the 5 point designer checklist.
Mm.
And we we use it as a, it's what we use as a guide, similar to what I was doing with you, to walk through the space. Now, you basically checked off a lot of it. We talked about lighting, but we say don't try to do it yourself because you've lived in the space so much, you don't see it anymore. It's better to have it with some other person that you trust to give that impression of, but it's just, it shows you kind of what you need to fix right away. And what's your first impression? How dirty is it? How cluttered is it? Uncluttering and getting things clean is not expensive,
That's
but it's
true.
very, very important, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So things of that
Yes.
sort. I know some therapists work in their office and meet with people, and your desk was extremely clean compared to some that we've seen. So that's, you know, you think about
Thanks.
I think about the people that go into law offices where the lawyer has stuff everywhere and
Oh
you
my
begin to think,
gosh.
can this guy keep up with anything?
Right.
You know, it's an interesting, psychology that happens with us in that when we use a judgment that we have, that immediate
Yes.
perception. Let me use perception over judgment of our perception of what we're seeing. So does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. This is fantastic. Yeah. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like I mean, it's very complicated and there's a lot to dig into, but this was great. And we covered a
Well,
lot
I'm going to
of,
say this. There are people that can help you do this, whether you hire us or you hire someone else, especially the decorator part, the staging and the decorator part.
yeah,
Um, it's just like, I can't be a therapist. I'm
sure.
not going to be a therapist, right? That's not my thing. I hire someone. If I need a therapist, I hire a therapist. So don't try to do it yourself. If you could do it yourself, it'd already be done.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna ask one last question just around
okay.
that idea. Um that because I run into folks who will build a website or maybe decorate their office. It seems to come up more with the website though. And they're like, I did this myself. And let's just be honest, like it does not look good, or it could look a lot better, let's say. So I'm curious, do you run into that with folks and how do you navigate that as the, consultant or designer?
Well, when they come to us, they realize they can't do it.
Okay, so they're already sort of admitting defeat, so to speak, or
Yeah.
admit
Yeah.
that they need some
Yeah.
support there.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Occasionally we'll have them come to us because we're real experts at office flow,
Mm-hmm.
practice flow and stuff. We'll have
Mm-hmm.
them come to us and they don't want the aesthetic piece at all. And you look at it and go, I can make you flow better and it's going to help, increase your efficiency,
Yeah.
but it's not going to add. So the flow helps increase or increases efficiency and helps reduce overhead, I'll call it, where the aesthetics increases revenue and increases attraction. So we can work on flow all day long, but it's not going to help that attraction. So if you don't want to get rid of your chairs that are from the 80s, which by the way, you can still buy chairs that look like they're from the 80s. So
Oh, sure.
it's not how old the chairs are. So it's just the style. So we tell, I do work with students, I teach students, as I was telling you earlier. And we say, get the highest style you can get and
Mm-hmm.
spend the least amount of money you can and put it in your budget to replace it in 5 years. So
Hmm.
you can put residential furniture a doctor's office easily. It's just going to wear out faster because it's not intended to be in a non-commercial space like that or commercial
Yeah.
space. But I hate it when they buy these chairs. They'll buy chairs, they'll find them on some like Office Liquidator, and
Uh-huh.
they buy them dated. They're already dated. It's
Right.
like, okay, yeah, their structure, they're good. I understand, but the wood tone is, from the 80s and the fabric is from the 80s. And what are you doing here? So
That's fair.
it's sad. So don't try to do it yourself. The whole purpose is to help you guys be better educated consumers and to
Nice.
understand what you're dealing with. So,
Well, I think we accomplished that mission. I
okay,
have a lot to
great.
think about. Yeah, I'm going to go to my office manager with a big long list of things to
Not too
work
much.
on that
We
are
didn't
waiting
do
here.
too much.
That's true. That's true. No, I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Carolyn. This is fun.
Yeah, I had fun. I haven't done this on a podcast before. I'm going to remember this. I can't wait till it comes out. So they'll be great.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm super grateful and I hope that folks found it helpful as well. And hopefully our paths will cross again soon.
Oh, we'll plan on it. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.